Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. This program is, most of the programs, if not all of them these days, they are recorded. Now, let me explain why I'm going down this road, because many people like to say that let's do a pre-record, to which I say, how do you do that? I'd like to know how you pre-record something before you record it. I mean, it's either live or it's recorded. It's not pre-recorded. And unfortunately, I am a stickler. Why do I bring that up? Because I'm recording it on a computer. Computers have advanced. I find it fascinating that we're not really being inundated these days by, okay, it's time now to upgrade to the latest, greatest, fastest computer. I don't know how they can get any faster than instantaneous. But there's an element of computerization and digitization that I am very fascinated by, especially from a lot of the sci-fi stuff. And it has to do with artificial intelligence and its role in our lives. If you don't think that it already exists, think again. And it is slowly but surely making its way into our everyday lives, to the extent that, if I am correct, and my guest will help us to understand this as well, it is also helping us to live happier, healthier, specifically healthier, less stressed lives. And we're going to talk with our very special guest, who is going to basically talk to you and me about his latest work. Harry Glorikian is an influential global business expert with more than 3 decades of experience building successful ventures in North America, Europe, Asia, and the rest of the world. Harry, you could have just said globally. Harry, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Richard.
Now, can I be assured that I am actually talking to the human Harry Glorikian, and not some artificially digitized intelligence on the other end of Zoom?
That's correct. At this point, yes, that's. But what you said is actually possible, much more than people think. If you just take the little snippets of people talking, an AI system can actually completely reproduce someone's voice.
I don't know if you remember this or not, in radio many years ago, they used to use what were called sound boards. Now, you can find them online everywhere. And what they've done is they've taken voice clips of different people. You could go to Arnold Schwarzenegger. You could go to Batman. You could go to Wonder Woman. You can go to pretty much anybody. And you could say, for example, dial up on the phone, and you would start the conversation. Hi, I'm Batman, and they would respond. And then you would hit another button that would reply to or continue the conversation in such a way as that person probably would not really pick up on it. Today, we now have the capabilities of, am I incorrect in this, almost literally having a conversation with a computer. And I'm going to use that word for the sake of a better one, because that's really what it is. It may be artificial intelligence, but it's still digital. It's still, shall we say, computerized. There's still a program. There's coding that is going on. Would that be a fair assessment?
To actually have a verbal conversation with it, I think we're not fully there yet.
Okay.
To do it via chat or text, absolutely. There's a test called the Turing test, which is when someone is interacting with a system like this electronically, would they be able to tell if it's a human or not? And passing the Turing test usually means that a human being cannot tell the difference. But by voice, I don't believe we're there yet. Otherwise, Siri would be a lot better at what it does.
And Google.
But but you can mimic someone's voice. There are programs like Descript or Podcastle, and you just give it a recording of your voice, and then you start typing, and it'll speak just like you do.
The book that we're going to talk about, among other things, and you have 3 that are out at the present time, The Future You, How Artificial Intelligence Can Help You Get Healthier, Stress Less, and Live Longer. Now, if you don't have the first element, there's no point in even having this third element, and that being a healthier you and then living longer. Well, I wouldn't want to live longer if I wasn't healthy. I can tell you that right now. And I shared this with you as we started. My father is 90 years of age. I visited him at Christmas 2021. He's still getting around, still moving, still doing stuff, still riding his exercycle. He is not a happy camper because of his health. And there are a lot of people who are younger than my 90-year-old father who are kind of feeling the same way. I'm 61 and I'm pretty doggone happy. I've made it through the bout of high blood pressure. They say that the gallbladder is one of the seats of anger in the body, and I had mine ripped out. Just so happens it was during the Olympics of 2021. And so I say I won the gold medal in the gallbladder clean and jerk. And before that, I would get, I spilled milk. Now I'd spill a glass of milk and I'd have that. Okay, let's clean it up. I mean, and that's the only explanation that I have for that. But I've also reversed type 2 diabetes in less than a month and a half back in 2020. And anybody can do it. I've lost probably 15 to 20 pounds in that process. It was not a diet I chose, but I'll take it. So I feel as though I have a shot at living a healthier life and living to be 100 plus, because I have to outlive my great-grandmother who lived to be 100. She even got one of those letters, like from the governor of the state of Arizona, who congratulated her on being a centenarian. Out of curiosity, Harry, how would you feel about living to be 100, 120, et cetera, et cetera? Would that be, is that something that you would want to do as long as you were healthy?
As long as I was healthy and had my wits about me, I think, and be able to stay engaged and active, right? Have purpose and meaning on a daily basis, as opposed to just sit there and age over time. But I would tell you that, the person that is going to live to 130 has already been born at this point.
Oh, really?
Oh, with all the
technology,
therapies, monitoring systems that we can talk about on this show, we believe that that's already happened already.
Wow. That's pretty cool, actually. Now, is it possible that someone, say, of my age could be that person? Or do you think it's somebody that's been born in, say, the last 10 or 20 years? Because now the technologies are getting better and better, where we're getting very close, I would think, to the technologies that we've actually seen on Star Trek. Maybe not the original series.
Most of the stuff we've been pretty good at doing from Star Trek, which was an incredible driver for most of the things that you see today, like cell phones and everything else. I would say that it's somebody that's probably been born in the last 20 or 30 years, as opposed to maybe me and you that probably did a few things to our body earlier in life that we may have not wanted to do now in hindsight. But a lot of the systems that I talk about is, they're monitoring systems. You mentioned high blood pressure. Well, if you had, one of these wireless blood pressure cuffs where you could just take it at home, you probably would have seen your blood pressure going up way before it became a problem.
Mm. And
You
the
know,
real irony? You know what the real irony is? I moved to Santa Barbara in 2006. I was never diagnosed in Phoenix with high blood pressure. Now, I was 46 when I moved. My mother has told me high blood pressure runs in the family, which I poo-poo. I say, well, I don't care. I don't want it. Okay. And it wasn't until I moved here to Santa Barbara that apparently my blood pressure went up. Now, there's also the possibility that, and I'm going to go back to the gallbladder issue, as far as that metaphor for the seat of anger and frustration and so forth, that my gallbladder was very infected and I had a gallstone the size of a golf ball. And it is possible that shortly after we moved here, maybe could have been 2, 3, 4, 5 years after we moved here, is when my gallbladder started to go down that path. That may have precipitated. Now, I'm supposed to, as of this conversation with you and I'm supposed to go see my physician in a few days for my regular 6-month checkup. And we'll see where the blood pressure is. I'm only taking one medication now, whereas I was taking 2. And that's self-diagnosed. I've been feeling great. I have not been overdoing it or exerting myself. I haven't been angry or frustrated. And I know that blood pressure can rise even if you're not angry. Right. But I'm kind of looking forward to that, as well as having him draw the blood and run the A1C test, because I had type 2 diabetes and an A1C of 11.2 on the 24th of July 2020. When I went to see him the end of October of that same year, it was down to 5.7. But it was down below that because I had one of those monitors, you prick your finger and so forth. Yep. And it was already down in the middle of September. So, I had already gotten it down and it stayed down and it's not going back up. Sodas, I think, were the biggest culprit. But anyway, aside that, back to the medical aspects. There are now machines. That's what we would call them, machines. They call them robots or what have you, but a robot is still a machine. There's one that is very popular, especially here in California, here at cottage hospitals. I believe they call it, isn't it Da Vinci, something like that?
Correct.
Yes, there's a doctor on, who's there, a surgeon who's right there, but the machine is doing all the work.
So it's a human that is controlling the arms of the machine. The machine can perform surgeries at a much, much, much smaller level and at a much more precise level.
Yeah.
So instead of, say, cutting you open, it just has to make maybe 2 or 3 very small holes, and the instruments would go in. In reality, if you have a good internet connection, technically the surgeon can be across the country or across the world and be performing the surgery on someone laying on that table remotely.
I just want to know who I would sue for malpractice. The doctor or Da Vinci?
Well, you know what? I would be surprised if somebody hasn't tried to sue one or both by now.
Yeah, I know. I say that facetiously because we don't want to go down that road, folks. But that's one of the amazing things. And do you think that eventually technology will get to the point with AI where they will input all of the patient's information, the scans, all of the blood tests, all of the medical information that has led the patient to needing a particular procedure, to where, let's just say Da Vinci with AI will say, okay, we know what we need to do. And we'll even have the technology to where we can do a continuous scan, live real-time scan of the inside of the body while the instruments are going in, which you can't see from the outside without a scan, like an X-ray or an MRI, that kind of thing, to where now you've got surgical procedures, for example, are being done now without a human controlling the instruments.
So I have a hard time seeing that at this point. Not that someday the technology may not be able to get there, but I think having a human, what we've seen is that machine plus a human you get a better outcome than one or the other by themselves.
Okay. We're talking with Harry Glorikian, and he is the author of The Future You, and it's just fascinating stuff, and I hope you'll stay with us here as we continue talking with him, as you continue to listen here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's great to have Harry Glorikian on our program here as we're talking about The Future You. It's just great, great stuff because this can be so beneficial for so many people. You're also well known for your achievements in life science, healthcare, diagnostics, healthcare IT, and the convergence of these areas. You've also you're a sought-after speaker, frequently quoted in the media, and regularly, regularly asked to assist, influence, and assess influence and be part of the innovative concepts and trends. And you hold 4 U.S. patents in telecommunications as well as others pending. So you have an understanding, like probably most people do not, of the inner workings of what would create AI. Right now, the closest that I am to artificial intelligence in my day-to-day work would be my laptop that has Windows 10 on it. And every time I go to open up a program, it asks me, are you sure you want to do this? Like it's looking out for me, which it isn't. I know, it's just part of the programming. But I have to still click OK in order to continue on to do any work. That isn't AI, granted. But there are certain aspects of our technology that are somewhat interactive in that, we'll have put in some information and then it leads us somewhere else based upon that information to continue the survey, the questionnaire, the whatever it might be. Is this... It seems like the coding aspect has gotten so much easier as well, because I remember growing up in the computer age in the 90s with DOS.
Yes.
I wrote my first line across a CRT, and I looked at it going, as Urkel would say, did I write that? And what was amazing was I understood what I wrote, and I understood what I was asking the computer to do. Whereas today...
Yeah, I mean, things have changed a lot. If you look at, there's a whole movement now called no code, where you will be able to take blocks and put them together, and then the system will perform an activity for you. But I think most people don't realize that almost everything that they're interacting with, if it's Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, Siri, Alexa, any one of these things has a backend that's using some form of artificial intelligence. And that's sort of artificial intelligence is a catch-all phrase that there's a bunch of tools underneath it, and you would, try to figure out the right tool for the right job. But everybody's using it on a daily basis if they have a smartphone or a computer, or they're watching Netflix, like I said. There's something in the background that is assisting them or trying to help them make a better decision. The main things that I talk about in the book are technologies or apps that people can incorporate into their life that can improve their health, either monitoring. What I like to say is if you're younger, it might be a way to just be healthier. If you're middle age, it might be a way to sort of stave off chronic problems. And if you have a chronic problem, it may be a better way for you to manage and monitor that chronic problem. You mentioned, diabetes and waiting to get your A1C. What if you could wear a continuous glucose monitor where you could just, right after every meal, just wave your phone right over the monitor that's on your arm and know exactly what your levels are at that moment and be able to adjust your diet so that you don't spike your insulin levels. And that's available.
Right. That's available now. This is amazing.
Yeah, no, totally available now. Yeah. And the AI system might say, don't eat this, but here's 3 alternatives, so that you're not totally having to give something up, but giving you an alternative to it. And then, a wireless blood pressure cuff, where instead of going to your doctor and saying, here's the one measurement that I did on this one day, to here's my last 6 months of measurements. And in the pattern is what the doctor will look at. And by looking at the pattern, they'll know if everything is staying good over time. Because that old thing, like you take your car in and you say it's making a noise. Of course, when you take it in, it's not making the noise.
Yeah.
By using these technologies, you're sort of looking at a longitudinal view of data.
Yeah.
And so when there's a spike somewhere, that longitudinal view will pick them up over time so that a physician can manage you better.
Well, now there is a heart monitor device that you can buy that's connected to your phone to detect 3 different heart conditions, which just is unbelievable. I mean, even when they came out with the portable defibrillator, I was stunned because, my God, how can they do that? Because it requires quite a bit of power. And then, of course, I realized, well, it's not the power. It's not the voltage. It's the amperage. But anyway, now you've got these portable defibrillators. And now you've got a portable, again, blood pressure check. That's the one. Exactly. It's amazing.
So I'm holding up a product from AliveCore, and it will do 6 different parameters of your heart. And you can actually, it's like $90. So it's not, it's not prohibitively expensive.
Right.
And you can do that. And an AI system will look at the trace.
Yeah.
And be able to tell you if something is out of line. And then you can just email it to your doctor. So, these technologies that I talk about in the book, or apps, are things that people can incorporate into their life to help them manage their health better, so that they can stay away from being sick or understand how they're managing themselves, right? So the biggest problem is if you're only seeing your doctor once a year.
Yeah.
It's
amazing. Harry Glorikian is my guest. We're talking about the future you. That's right, the future you, the future me. And we can have that future us today because there are already so many incredible innovations, specifically, as we're talking here, in the medical and healthcare fields. And we're going to continue talking about those things as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we are so pleased to have Harry Glorikian on the program today. God, what a brain you've got. Plus the fact that, and only those who are watching the YouTube channel know that Harry and I have the same barber. And that's why I put mine in parentheses, are so smart, so intelligent, so intuitive, and all that good stuff. But I want to dive into something, Harry, that I find that is going to be a little bit of a challenge for part of one of our institutions. Okay, not the medical institution. Okay. And that is the fact that what you are engaged in helping people to be healthier, stress less, and live longer, is totally contrary to, and again, this is public perception, of what the pharmaceutical companies want. They don't want you to be healthier. They want you to be sick so that you can take their medications. And one of the scariest things about that is I was watching one of those commercials for a pill for a particular heart condition. The scary part was when they went to the side effects. The heart condition you're taking the pill for is one of the side effects. It's like, are you kidding me? Now, it may be only 0.5% of all those people they tested during the trials and everything had those conditions. All right, maybe so. But still, it's like, are you kidding me? And then they tell you, and don't take this pill if you've had this, you've done that, you've gone there, you've been now. And I'm sitting here thinking, why don't you just put in there if you eat, drink, and breathe, But there is that counter that almost seems as though it's going to eat into part of our economy, because there are so many people who believe the economy is more important than life itself, it seems.
So, Richard, let me add. So, you know, knowledge evolves over time, and so we get better and better at things as we understand. And so, there are genetic tests that people can take that would indicate whether they would have an adverse effect to certain medications ahead of time, so that they can sort of decrease the trial and error. God forbid, if you have some sort of cancer, there is genomic sequencing that would be done on the tumor that would help potentially identify the perfect therapy for that particular tumor type, so that you would get a better outcome rather than what we used to do in the past, which was trial and error. So the technology is moving forward quite quickly. And I talk about a lot of these things in the book, hoping that anybody that reads it will have a couple of takeaways that will make them more knowledgeable if they end up in these situations, or they have a loved one that ends up in this situation, understanding how they would approach this with more information. And with more information, you can sort of hopefully get to a better outcome than you would have without it. But these technologies are moving forward very quickly. So it's not that the pharmaceutical company wants to sell you something that is going to have an adverse effect. What they're doing now is a lot of the new, especially in oncology, drugs that are coming out, you can't even get it if you're not positive for that gene sequence. So that it's a much more targeted medication that will hopefully have a positive impact on the tumor. There's a technology called CRISPR technology.
Yes.
Which I also talk about in the book, where now we can go in and make a single letter change in a gene that might be diseased in your body, and completely reverse that disease. Sickle cell is actually the first one, or one of the first ones that they've done.
I saw the report.
Childhood blindness is another one. And basically that's one dose and you're done.
Wow. I was born legally blind with 3 different conditions: nystagmus, stigmatism, and cataracts. And of course, these were all hereditary from my father's side of the family. Now, it skipped my 2 older sisters, but then hit myself, my brother, and my 2 younger sisters. Since then, I've had a lens implant, probably still have the nystagmus and stigmatism, and I have lost vision in my left eye due to glaucoma. I've often wondered, and I don't know where AI comes into play with this. Every 7 years it is said that we have a brand new body because the cells are constantly sloughing off and regenerating and so forth. So that every 7 years you have a brand new body. And I asked the question, I says, okay, if I cut my hand and it heals back, unless there's a scar, you would never know that I cut my hand, right? Then why, if after 7 years, doesn't my left eye heal back to, let's say, a normal, say, 20/20 state in terms of regenerating back to the kind of cells that would allow me to see out of that left eye? Or for that matter, the right eye in terms of, even though I have a lens implant and so forth. And that's always fascinated me as to why that does not happen. We have other animals, creatures on the planet, they'll lose their tail and it'll grow back. You know, it's like, okay.
There are people working on regenerative medicine approaches. And there are some advances being done in that space, especially in sort of veins and arteries is probably the first place where we're seeing that happen. But you're seeing some rapid advancement in that space.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. But from an optical perspective, there is an AI system where you would take a image of the eye, and it would be able to diagnose immediately diabetic retinopathy. Google is working on also a scanning system that you'd look in, it would take one image of your eye and diagnose 50 diseases from that one scan. So you can imagine in the not so distant future, and when I say that, I'm like the next maybe 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
You could see something like that at CVS, where you'd walk up, look into it, it would take an image, be able to identify if there was a problem. If there was a problem, it can then say, can you step into this booth? Through telemedicine, the doctor will see you and be able to interact with you directly right then and there.
Wow.
So many people that, might not go to the eye doctor to have that exam done could do it on a regular basis because it might be part of their insurance, or it might only cost a short, few bucks
to
get it done. But these technologies are making this care available, and it's deflationary because every year that technology does more and more for the same price or less.
We're talking with Harry Glorikian, and he is the author of the book we're discussing and the concepts, The Future You, and I hope you'll get a copy of it. I hope that you will go to his website. Matter of fact, his website, interesting and strangely enough, it's Glorikian.com. That's Glorikian.com. And this is how artificial intelligence can help you get healthier, stress less, and live longer as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I want to ask you, Harry, a question that I'm sure is going through the minds of some folks. And there are a lot of issues that I want to talk about here, but this one in particular, in terms of AI. Where's the line between helping us to live healthier, quality-filled lives and playing God?
I don't exactly know how to define the second part of your question.
Well,
what
let
I
me
will tell
go ahead.
Right? Knowledge is power, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have knowledge, you're sort of one step back, right? Can't fight a war if you don't understand what's happening on the field,
right?
And what these technologies do is bring knowledge to everyone that utilizes them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it could be something as simple as a wireless scale where you can see, my weight's going up after Christmas. Maybe I need to course adjust in January. Something as simple as that can have a profound long-term effect on your health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's playing God per se, but it's empowering you with the knowledge to take care of this thing, this body, this machine that we use every single day,
right,
to last longer so that you can have a healthier, better outcome. I mean, me and a bunch of friends are like, God, one day you just want to sort of drop over, like just like somebody pulled the plug on the machine, rather than, deteriorate over time.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of these technologies will give you insight into postponing or even potentially completely avoiding that deterioration. Now, if you're born with a genetic, disease, that's, well, it is what it is.
Yeah, but with the technologies, as you described with CRISPR, we're getting to the point now where we can almost weed out some of those genetic issues. I'll call them genetic issues.
You can actually go in and fix some of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about in the book, there's a number of places that are now doing genetic sequencing of newborns. And they're identifying issues that can be fixed right then and, early on,
Right.
so that the child doesn't have that problem later on in life.
Right.
And so, like I said, the information gives you the ability to
Right.
know what you need to fix or know what you need to watch. You hate it when somebody shows up at the doctor and, like you said, they have high blood pressure, or now they're, full-blown diabetic. If they knew ahead of time, most, not all, will make a course correction and hopefully be able to avoid that issue.
Well, it's also been said, too, by others we've had on this program dealing with alternative health, wellness, preventative health care, and so forth, that there are people, such as myself, using myself as the example, who, prior to getting or prior to achieving type 2 diabetes, that up until that point, I had the potential for type 2 diabetes. It did not mean that I would get it, but that if I went down a particular path, kind of like your example of the wireless scale and, my weight's up, so I need to course change. If I have the potential for that, then I can then use my brain to say, okay, what do I need to do to avoid that potential becoming a reality, because I don't want it. Because there are a lot of other things that come along that are going to do me in if I go down that particular road.
So, yes, if the best predictors are family history.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have it in your family, you should keep an eye on it. But just like everybody, you sort of, life gets in the way and you're not on top of it on a regular basis. But if you had, something that was monitoring it, that every once in a while you glance at and you see, hey, this line looks like it's going in the wrong direction. It sort of keeps you on track, right? Like a lot of these exercise programs will have sort of ways to gamify, make it fun to participate, and keep the person engaged. Yeah. If you're driving your car and there was no gas gauge, you could try and count your miles and know when you're going to run out of gas, but at some point, car's going to stop, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're in trouble. But having a gauge there, or having that early warning signal that says that something is headed towards a problem, gives you a chance to sort of manage it before it becomes a problem. And that's what a lot of these accessible technologies now really bring to bear. Something as simple as monitoring your sleep. If you don't get enough sleep or get enough of the right sleep, things break down really quickly. Remember, like when you want to torture somebody, you deprive them of sleep, things go wrong pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so if there's a way to optimize your sleep because you're monitoring it, there's a whole bunch of diseases that you might be able to push out because your body is given the time to fix itself while you're sleeping.
Yeah. Speaking of sleep and also the issue of weight loss, I used to have a real problem with snoring. Now, this was when I was between 190 and 200 pounds. Now, I'm only 5'9". Okay? So, but I will tell you that the number didn't feel good. It wasn't the weight that didn't feel good. It was that number. I says, 200, that's not me. I actually reached 200 pounds. I'm going, that number's not me. So as soon as I brought the weight down, my sleep apnea and so forth, I don't know if it actually went away. I know that my wife would tell me if I was snoring and keeping her awake, but so far in the last few years, she hasn't said anything, so I'm going to take it that I'm probably doing pretty good. And the thing that people don't realize is when you lose weight and you see that on the outside, you're also losing weight on the inside. Okay?
Correct.
And so this is the way I've looked at this. If you increase the weight, you can see it on the outside. But that means that on the inside, too, the tissues are now coming closer together and compressing different things. So then the body has to compensate with inflammation in order to protect those areas, and it pushes away, and you get the swelling and all that kind of stuff. Whereas if you drop the weight, the body isn't going to compensate. my aches and pains in my knees. Now, I did have to have arthroscopic surgery on my right knee for a torn meniscus. Pretty typical kind of thing for people who, I bicycled a lot when I was a younger, up until about 36, 37 years of age. I love walking, and I had to have that repaired. Once it was done, I was good to go. I have been fabulous on that knee. My left knee, on the other hand, though I haven't had it checked, every once in a while, if I overstress it, it'll swell just a little bit. Okay. So I've kind of learned and listened to the body. So this kind of goes to the next subject I want to talk about, incorporating AI into our healthcare plan, as we continue with Harry Glorikian here on Tell Me Your Story. And we're encouraging you to go to Glorikian.com, which we will be linked to, Harry, so people can find out more about you and your book, The Future You, here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. And Harry, I wanted to ask you, as we continue here on the program, this aspect. I know that I asked you about that line between just taking care of oneself as opposed to the medical community now playing God, that kind of thing, which kind of brings into the equation. Some people will say, well, but how do you know that the universe, God, the divine, whatever, however you want to phrase it, how do you know that this isn't the path for mankind to take, using AI, using all of these incredible technologies? We don't know. Other than, and this, I want to ask you about this, other than checking in, as we've been encouraging people over the last few years to participate in the decade of the perfect vision, 2020s, going within and listening to that still small voice. How much of your intuition plays in the research and discovery and inventing of or innovating new technologies utilizing AI?
So if you think about listening to the inner voice, there's a lot of noise out there, right? So people sometimes lose track of that, what's going on. My wife says, well, if you just have more in tune with your body. I'm like, honey, I got a million things to do. So I would rather have, some of these technologies sort of put it out for me, right, with data in front of me so that I can manage myself better, rather than me try to always be in tune with what's going on so that I can course correct. Although I will tell you that there are a number of AI-based meditation technologies that are out there that are making a world of difference in people stressing less, especially during this time of COVID.
Really?
I'm a firm believer in transcendental meditation. That one seems to work for me as opposed to a lot of the other techniques. But there are a number of AI-based meditation approaches that really make a big difference for most people. And it can only, a minute here and a minute there. It doesn't have to be hours. And you don't have to be the Buddhist monk to do it.
Yeah.
You can be anybody at any age. And it de-stresses you, which brings down your blood pressure, helps you sleep better, all those things that cause problems. It can help you sort of align you a little bit better.
Harry Glorikian's my guest. Glorikian.com's the website. The Future You is the book. And this is Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and I wanted to ask you, Harry Glorikian of Glorikian.com, about sort of the next level of AI, the next, the progression, I guess, is really what I want to say, because I know that the technologies are there to allow AI to learn independently of coding. In other words, built into the programming is this feature that says, as you gather more information, more input from the outside world, you are going to start, quote unquote, thinking for yourself.
So that would be, sort of what people will categorize maybe as super AI. And I don't think we're anywhere near there at the moment. But if you talk about things like narrow AI, where you're having it do one thing really well. It can learn incredibly well on that one topic, right? So one example that everybody will understand is, training an AI to recognize a cat, right? There's gazillion cat videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
So training it, you've got a big enough training set to train that system. But where we're seeing huge advances in this area is looking at X-rays, radiology scans, where the AI system can scan it and identify it for the doctor to say, hey, look in this one spot. Or we just had the first prostate pathology system get approved by the FDA, where the system can help the physician identify the prostate cancer much faster than, say, the human being on their own. The two together have a higher percentage of catching it. So in these narrow AI areas, we're seeing advancement happen very, very quickly.
It is incredible to think that man is almost literally creating a new, can I call it species? It may be digital, it may be mechanical, it may be a lot of different things. It's not biological. It's not necessarily carbon-based as we are, as they say. Is that a fair assessment that man is actually in that stage where we are actually creating a new species that we may have to modify our Constitution to allow them to have rights somewhere down the road? I mean, look at what we've been through just as the human race over the last 500 to 1,000 years.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what everybody who's really living, eating, sleeping the space says, I don't necessarily see that becoming a problem. The biggest thing I'd probably be worried about is, autonomous AI weaponry. That would be my biggest worry if I was thinking about that. Also, people don't realize that, a la Facebook and other groups, that, you have a lot of information out there. If I have a lot of information out there, I can manipulate you without you realizing that it's happening. Mm-hmm. Those are the areas that if anything worries me, those are the areas I worry about. Mm-hmm. Worrying about Commander Data from Star Trek showing up tomorrow is not, although that would be really cool in some ways. Yeah. That is not anything that I'm expecting tomorrow. But there are robots being created that will, there's one company I've been looking at where the robot will interact with children to play with them and encourage them to do what they need to do. In other words, if they're in the cancer ward and they're not hungry, the robot may say to the child, well, if I need to go power up to play with you more. Don't you want to go eat so you can play with me? And that encourages the child to then have something to eat. So there are systems like that are evolving.
Uh-huh. Now, I realize that this question has already been answered by you in the last 48 minutes of this program, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
In regards to AI and all of the pros and cons, self-determination versus predestination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the question that I always put forth when it comes to a lot of these new technologies and things that come about is, just because we can, does that mean we should? Especially with what you just proposed as one of the cons to AI.
There's a bunch of stuff that we probably shouldn't. But the best way to defend yourself is be knowledgeable about what's going on. If you're not knowledgeable about it, it's the knowledge is out there, so you got to try to at least be on top of it.
Right.
So I would not take information blindly. I'd sort of, take a look at where it came from and dig into it a little bit more. But it's happening, and it's happening at a scale that time scale that is it's even shocking to me sometimes how quickly things are turning. I'll give you an example. When we sequenced God, now I forgot the name of the thing we sequenced. Holy crap.
It's okay.
It was one of the early things that could have been a pandemic, and it took us 3 months to sequence the first one. Well, coronavirus, we sequenced that in 48 hours. And so pretty soon you're going to be able to see that we'll sequence the next one in 24 hours, right? And so the speed of these changes is happening at a breakneck pace. So I encourage people to sort of at least have a basic understanding of what's going on so that they're not caught off guard.
I know, too, that our governments are having a difficult time with this continual changing of technologies and so forth, because I think it was in the 90s or something like that, or maybe the early 2000s, where our Congress here in the U.S., basically they had no laws governing social media and smartphones and all of that aspect of technology in terms of privacy and what have you. There really weren't any laws on the books to govern that. So they had to come up with new laws because they hadn't kept up with the technology advancements. And I have a feeling that the same thing's going to happen in this realm as well. But, that's kind of the way it goes, because the same thing happened, but at a much slower pace, when we went from the horse and buggy to the horseless carriage.
Yeah, whenever I get the chance to talk to policymakers, my request from them is you got to be ahead of it. Even if you're wrong, you got to get ahead of it, because if you're behind it, you don't realize you're already 2-3 technology steps behind it, not one step. For example, right now, Google is using an AI platform to develop its next AI chip. So there's an AI software platform developing itself for its own next generation.
Wow.
So these are the things that, if you don't realize how quick, and it's not a 20% improvement, it's a 10, 20, 100, 200, 400% improvement. So if you're not getting ahead of it, you're not one step behind, you're 10 steps behind. But at the same token, if you think about how to incorporate these things into your life so that it can help you be healthier or stay on top of things, there's the good part of it. And I try to stay on that side of the scale as much as possible. Every once in a while, there's a few things that ring my bell on the negative side, but I think there's so much good that can be done on a human scale. I mean, all the technologies I've talked about used to be in the doctor's office. Now you can have them at home. And if you think about it, pretty much any third world country pretty soon will have a wireless blood pressure cuff, or, they already have cell phones. So they're not far behind from healthcare being much more available on a global basis to anybody.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. There's a ultrasound system that normally you'd have to go to an ultrasound technician to do the ultrasound. The system will tell the user, who has no experience at all, move a little to the right, move a little to the left, tilt it this way, tilt it that way, and you will get an almost perfect ultrasound done by somebody that's had no training.
Yeah. I often joke with people when I'm training them in my field of broadcasting on the equipment that we use and the software that we use for sound editing. I said, it's simple. It's just very easy. Well, yeah, that's easy for me to say because I've been doing it for over 40 years. But it's like you say, it has been made so user-friendly. And that's one of the good things, the real pros in that regard. We're talking with Harry Glorikian. Glorikian.com is the website. The Future You is the book. I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true here on the program. And we're here with Harry Glorikian. And Harry, we're just about out of time here. I first of all, I can't thank you enough for this rather frank and open conversation about this technology that I know there are some people who are just absolutely jazzed about. They can hardly wait to transfer their consciousness to, these kinds of things, which is a whole nother thing. I realize that's a whole nother genre, and it may still be science fiction, but I've always said that where science fiction goes, reality is soon to follow. But thank you so much for not only being on this program and sharing your ideas, but also for the work that you've been doing over the last 30 plus years to help make our lives better in terms of the quality of our lives. I don't want quantity if I don't have quality.
Correct. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. And I do have 3 final questions for you that I like to ask all of my guests before we wrap. But I do want to let you, the listener and the viewer, know that this program is here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., as well as 9 a.m. on Wednesday mornings for the special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, Amazon, iHeart, many other locations across the breadth and width and depth and whatever else esoteric aspects of the internet that you can find. We hope that you will listen as well as view these programs on YouTube, the channel Tell Me Your Story, Richard Dugan. Just look for the guy with the black hat, okay? Also, if you'd like to support the work we're doing here on the program, and this program may not have dealt an awful lot with the spiritual or metaphysical aspects of life, but it's going to have an impact. It will definitely, because you'll be able to not only discover and find your life's purpose, but also move on to fulfill it and live it out much longer. And again, we don't know whether the divine's intentions are for us to use these technologies or not. But I'll tell you what, if it makes our lives better and the quality of life better for everybody, then I'm all for it. I also want you to support us if you can. We have a PayPal account for your security as well as ours. When you go to send any contribution to us, it's going to ask you for the email address of the receiver, and mine is richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. And also participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s. We ask you to spend some time going within, listen to that still small voice in that quiet, calm, peaceful place, that inner space that is absolutely 100% guaranteed safe for you to be in, all right? Get to know yourself and who you really are, both the light and the shadow side, because it's all of that from one end to the other that makes you who you are, that makes me who I am. So we hope that you will spend some time doing that. All right, to the 3 questions on this game show as we wrap up the program in the lightning round of Tell Me Your Story. That's how I feel sometimes, Harry. The first question is, who is Harry Glorikian?
I'm a venture capitalist. I invest in the space and spend a lot of time looking at the technologies. I also write books. I have my own podcast where I interview people in the industry. And a father and hopefully all around good guy. That's pretty much me.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you're doing now?
Oh, I want to help people make a positive impact on their lives. I hope that, people will, potentially read the book and take away one thing that they can incorporate into their lives that would improve their health and wellness, or the health and wellness of someone that they love or take care of. And the companies that I try to invest in, I hope they have a profound impact on the health and wellness of a broader audience.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, first and foremost, be a good husband and a good father to my kids and a good family person. But at the same time, I get so excited about these technologies and the impact they have on people's health and how we can eradicate certain diseases and help people live a healthier, happier life. That when I take biology and I take technology and I put them together, that's the only direction that I see it all going in.
Mm. Well, Harry Glorikian, thank you again for being here with us here on the program. We hope to have you back again to talk more because you have a couple of other books out there. Matter of fact, tell us about those two other books real quickly, if you would.
Well, one of them is a textbook. It's about how to commercialize diagnostic products.
Okay.
And the other book is called Moneyball Medicine, which was my first sort of, let's say, a normal book as opposed to a textbook, which describes how data and technology is going to change medicine and life sciences.
Well, Harry, again, thank you so much for joining us here on the program and to your family for giving us this time with you. We continue to wish you much success in the work that you're doing to make our lives healthier, less stressed, as well as longer. With all three elements working together to help make this world a better place. And we appreciate what you have contributed to our world already. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to lol.